The Unlocked Drawer, Chapter 1. The Echo in the Old Dresser. Arizona, 2024. The desert sun, usually a comforting warmth, felt indifferent to Laura Hendricks's quiet solitude. At 58, recently widowed, she navigated a silence that pressed down on her small suburban home. Her husband, David, gone too soon. Her children grown, living their own busy lives across states. The house felt too big, yet too empty. She needed something to fill the void, something to occupy her hands and her mind. A local flea market, a sprawling outdoor labyrinth of forgotten treasures, seemed like a good place to start. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just a distraction, a small project to bring life back into her quiet rooms. It was there, tucked away in a dimly lit corner, that she saw it. An old wooden dresser. It wasn't grand, but it possessed a quiet dignity, its dark wood worn smooth by countless hands, hinting at stories held within. She bought it on a whim, drawn by an inexplicable pull. Back home, the dresser seemed to breathe a different air into her living room. It was heavier than it looked, solid and sturdy. As she began to clean it, wiping away decades of dust, she tried to open the top drawer. It groaned, stubbornly resisting. She tugged harder, jiggling it, until with a sudden, protesting thwack, it finally slid open. Inside, nestled beneath a thin, faded linen cloth, was a rectangular object wrapped carefully in yellowed tissue paper. Laura's heart gave a little flutter of curiosity. Gently, she peeled back the paper. It was a photo album, old, leather-bound, its cover worn smooth, with a faint, almost illegible title embossed on it. Memories. A strange sense of anticipation, almost a premonition, washed over her. Who did this belong to? Why was it hidden? She opened the album, her fingers tracing the brittle, sepia-toned pages. The first few pictures were of landscapes, anonymous faces at a picnic, a blurred shot of a dog. Then, on the third page, her breath hitched. A small group of children playing in a sun-dappled backyard, and among them, a little girl with wide, curious eyes and a missing front tooth. Laura knew that face, knew it intimately. It was her, a 5-year-old Laura. Her heart began to pound, a frantic drum against her ribs. She flipped the page, her hands trembling. More pictures. Her best friend from elementary school, Matthew Wilson, his gap-toothed grin unmistakable. Sarah Bennett, with her bright red hair and mischievous eyes. Her next-door neighbors, the Millers. The house in the background of one picture, her childhood home, undeniably. And then there was a woman. Young, maybe in her early 20s, with kind, warm eyes and a gentle smile, always looking at the children with a soft affection. Laura felt a profound sense of familiarity, a powerful echo from the deepest corners of her memory, but she couldn't place a name, couldn't pinpoint the exact connection. How could this album, filled with her own childhood memories, faces she hadn't seen in half a century, have ended up in a flea market dresser bought by her in a completely different part of the city from where she grew up? The coincidence was staggering, bordering on the mystical. The dresser wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a time capsule, a direct portal to a past she thought was long buried. The quiet solitude of her home was suddenly filled with the whispers of forgotten faces, demanding to be remembered, demanding to tell their story. The unlocked drawer had opened more than just a compartment. It had opened a window to a profound mystery of her own life. Chapter 2. Echoes of Childhood. The photo album, a portal to a forgotten past, lay open on Laura's lap. Each faded image brought a fresh wave of nostalgia, tinged with a bewildering sense of unreality. Here were the faces of her childhood, vivid and real, yet locked away in a wooden box she had stumbled upon by chance. She recognized Matthew Wilson immediately, his perpetually scruffy hair and a mischievous glint in his eyes. He was her first crush, her partner in countless backyard adventures, and Sarah Bennett, her confidant, her co-conspirator in elaborate games of make-believe. There was Mrs. Henderson, their stern but secretly kind third-grade teacher, the ice cream truck driver, Mr. Grumbles, who always gave them extra sprinkles. It was a parade of ghosts, each one bringing a faint echo of laughter, scraped knees, and whispered secrets. But it was the young woman who captivated her, appearing in many of the candid shots. She was tall and slender, with a cascade of wavy brown hair, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She was always near Laura, her hand on Laura's shoulder, or helping her tie her shoe, or listening intently as Laura chattered away. Her presence was warm, comforting, yet frustratingly elusive in Laura's memory. Who was she? Why was she so intimately woven into these early memories, yet completely absent from Laura's conscious recollection? One particular photograph caught her attention. It showed a group of children, including a very young Laura, playing in the front yard. And in the background, unmistakably, was her childhood home. A modest, two-story house with a distinctive porch swing and a sprawling oak tree. But more strikingly, perched on the front porch was the exact same wooden dresser she had just bought. The distinctive carvings on its drawers, the ornate brass handles. There was no doubt the dresser had belonged to her family, or at least it had been at her childhood home. A shiver ran down her spine. The coincidence was too profound to be mere chance. This wasn't just a random antique find. This dresser and the album within it were inextricably linked to her past. But why had it been sold? Why had these precious memories been left behind? Laura sat for hours, poring over the album, trying to coax more memories from the fog of time. Her childhood, though generally happy, had a period of blurriness, a time she rarely revisited. Her parents had been loving, but often preoccupied. She remembered a period of quiet tension, hushed conversations, a certain distance in her parents' eyes. She had been quite young then, perhaps 5 or 6. She had sought solace in imaginary worlds, in books, and in the company of her friends. The more she looked at the woman in the photos, the more a faint, almost ethereal memory flickered. A soft lullaby, the scent of lavender, a comforting hand on her forehead when she had a fever, a gentle voice reading stories, a name, a whisper of a sound, played at the edges of her mind. Emily, Emma? It was like trying to grasp smoke. She flipped to the very last page of the album. It was nearly empty, just a single faded black and white photograph. It showed the woman, now looking a little thinner, a bit more tired, but still with those kind eyes. She was holding a small, hand-painted wooden bird. The photo was undated, but the style suggested it was later than the others, perhaps taken shortly before the woman vanished from Laura's memory. A profound sense of longing, mixed with a chilling premonition, washed over Laura. This woman, this Emily or Emma, was clearly central to her early childhood, a figure of comfort and care during a time when her parents might have been emotionally distant. The album wasn't just a collection of old photos. It was a fragmented narrative, a silent plea from the past, urging Laura to remember, to understand, to finally uncover the story of the kind stranger who had been so integral to her earliest years, and why she had so abruptly vanished. The echoes of her childhood demanded to be heard. Chapter 3. The Ghost of the Caretaker. The relentless pursuit of the unknown woman's identity consumed Laura. The more she looked at the photos, the more she realized how central this woman had been to her very early childhood. She was present in so many moments where her parents were conspicuously absent, playing with her in the sandbox, teaching her to tie her shoes, comforting her when she scraped her knee. A guardian angel, a silent protector. The name Emily lingered stubbornly at the edge of her consciousness. Her own parents, while loving, had been private people, rarely discussing their past. Her father had passed years before her mother, and her mother had succumbed to Alzheimer's. Her later years, a fog of fragmented memories. Laura had no living relatives who could shed light on that specific period of her childhood. She was alone in this investigation. The emotional impact of these findings was profound. She began to connect the dots in her own life. The subtle sense of emotional distance she sometimes felt from her parents in her adolescence. The vague feeling of something missing from her earliest memories. It all began to crystallize around this unknown woman. Could her presence explain those voids? Laura decided to start with the most concrete lead she had, the old neighborhood. Though she hadn't lived there in decades and the city had grown, she knew the general area. She drove to her old street. The house was still there, altered slightly, but recognizable. The oak tree in the front yard was even larger. The memories, though still fragmented, felt stronger here. She knocked on the door of the house next door, where the Millers, her childhood neighbors, had lived. A new family lived there now, polite but unfamiliar. Laura explained her quest, the old dresser, the album. They had no information, but they suggested she try Mrs. Albright, who lived down the street and had been in the neighborhood for over 60 years. Mrs. Albright, frail but sharp, sat on her porch swing, just as Laura remembered. When Laura showed her the album, her eyes lit up. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, her voice raspy. "Little Laura and Matthew and Sarah." She pointed a trembling finger at the enigmatic woman. "And dear Emily, Emily Carter." Laura's heart leaped. Emily Carter. The name solidified, bringing with it a torrent of fragmented memories. Emily was not a neighbor, nor a distant relative. She was a nanny, a young woman, barely out of her teens, who had come to live with them during a difficult period for her parents. "Your mother was quite ill for a time, you see," Mrs. Albright explained, her voice tinged with old sorrow. "A long bout of pneumonia, and then the recovery was slow. Your father, he was working 2 jobs trying to keep things afloat. You were just a tiny thing, maybe 5. Emily, bless her heart, she came to help. She was a godsend, so kind, so patient with you. You adored her." A floodgate opened in Laura's mind. The hushed conversations, the worried expressions on her parents' faces. Her mother's prolonged absence from her daily life. It was all due to illness. And Emily, young Emily Carter, had stepped into the void, a beacon of warmth and stability when Laura's world felt uncertain. The lavender scent, the lullabies, the comforting hand, it was all Emily. "What happened to her?" Laura asked, her voice choked with emotion. "She just disappeared. I don't remember her leaving." Mrs. Albright's face clouded. It was quite sudden. Emily's own family. Her mother fell gravely ill, unexpectedly. They were from out of state, in New Mexico, I believe. Emily had to leave almost overnight to care for her. It was a terrible shame. You were so distraught when she left. Your parents tried to explain, but you were so little. They didn't want to upset you further, so they just said Emily went away. Laura felt a pang of deep sorrow, not abandonment, but necessity. Emily, too, had been forced to leave, taking on her own family's burden. And the dresser? The dresser, Mrs. Albright confirmed, belonged to Emily. She kept her things in it while she stayed with you. When she had to leave so suddenly, she asked your parents to hold on to it for her, just for a little while until she could send for it. But then, well, life got in the way, I suppose. Your parents moved a few years later. I always wondered what happened to that lovely dresser. The truth was laid bare. Emily Carter, her childhood caretaker, her forgotten angel. The dresser and the album, her cherished possessions. A record of a profoundly difficult, yet deeply loving period of her life. They weren't discarded. They were left behind in a desperate rush, a silent promise to return that fate had never allowed. The ghost of the caretaker had finally been named, and in doing so, had illuminated a forgotten chapter of Laura's own childhood, transforming confusion into profound understanding and longing. Now, a new quest began, to find Emily. Chapter 4, The Unsent Letter. Armed with the name Emily Carter and the knowledge of her abrupt departure to New Mexico, Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. The photo album was no longer a mystery. It was a map, guiding her towards a lost connection, a hidden anchor from her early childhood. She had found the ghost. Now she needed to find the woman herself. Her first step was to try online searches. Emily Carter, New Mexico, 1960s birth year. The internet, a vast ocean of information, proved challenging. Many Emily Carters. No specific location beyond New Mexico. She felt a surge of frustration. But the faces in the album, especially Emily's kind eyes, urged her on. She remembered Mrs. Albright mentioning her mother fell gravely ill. This provided a new lead. Old obituaries, perhaps? She shifted her search to public death records in New Mexico, focusing on the late 1960s or early 1970s, looking for a Mrs. Carter with an address in New Mexico, connected to an Emily. It was a painstaking process, requiring days of sifting through digital archives. Finally, a small, faded obituary from a local newspaper in Santa Fe, New Mexico, dated 1971, caught her eye. It was for a Martha Carter, survived by her daughter, Emily Carter, and crucially, it mentioned Martha's previous residence in Arizona, before moving to Santa Fe to be closer to family in her final illness. This had to be her. The obituary also listed a distant cousin, still residing in Santa Fe. Laura felt a tremor of excitement. This was it, a direct link. She found a phone number for the cousin, a hesitant stranger on the other end. Laura explained her story, the old dresser, the photo album, the forgotten childhood memories. There was a pause, a breath held across miles. Emily, the cousin's voice was soft, tinged with a familiar weariness. She's still here in Santa Fe. She's not well. Been through a lot in her life. Lives alone now. Her health has been failing for some years lately. Laura's heart sank, then swelled with a desperate urgency. Can you give me her contact information? I need to see her. I need to tell her something important. A few days later, Laura was on a plane to Santa Fe. The desert landscape was different from Arizona, more rugged, the mountains soaring against a brilliant blue sky. She found Emily's address in an older, quiet neighborhood. The house was small, well kept, but with a palpable sense of solitude. When Laura knocked, the door opened slowly. An elderly woman stood there, frail, her once wavy brown hair now thin and white. Her eyes, though clouded by age and illness, still held that familiar kindness. "Emily?" Laura whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Emily squinted, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Do I know you?" she asked, her voice thin, fragile. "I'm Laura," Laura said, her voice breaking. "Laura Hendricks, from Arizona. From..." Your memories. She held out the photo album. Emily's gaze settled on the album. Her eyes widened, a flicker of recognition, a spark of something profound, igniting in their depths. She took the album, her fingers trembling as she opened it to the first page. A gasp escaped her lips as she saw the familiar faces. Then her gaze landed on the little girl with the missing front tooth. Her own eyes filled with tears. "Laura," Emily whispered, the name a sacred sound, a remembrance from a long-lost past. "My sweet Laura." Laura stepped inside, tears streaming down her face. "Emily," she sobbed, embracing the frail woman. Thank you for everything." They sat together, the album open between them. Two women connected across decades by a thread of shared memory and profound, unspoken love. Emily's voice was weak, but as she spoke, the story of those missing years of Laura's childhood unfolded. "Your parents, they were good people, Laura," Emily began, her voice gaining a little strength with each word. "But your mother, she was so sick, and your father was overwhelmed. You were so small, and you needed so much attention. I loved taking care of you. You were like my own child." She recalled the long days, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the quiet moments of connection. "I saved those photos, darling. You were such a joy. When she fell ill, it was so sudden. I had to leave immediately. I couldn't get a hold of your parents. I left the dresser, the album, everything, hoping I could send for it later. But then my mother passed, and my own life became so difficult. I lost track of time. I never stopped thinking of you, though. My sweet Laura." Emily explained her life after leaving Arizona. Years of caring for her own ailing family, a quiet life, often filled with hardship and loneliness. The dresser, she explained, had been stored in a distant relative's garage after her mother's passing, until that relative also passed recently, and their possessions, including the dresser, were sold off. Laura listened, her heart aching with the weight of this new knowledge. Emily, her childhood angel, had suffered silently, carrying her own burdens, never knowing the profound impact she had had on a lonely little girl. The dresser wasn't just a random flea market find. It was a destiny, a message sent across decades, an unsent letter finally delivered, bringing two souls back together for a reunion that transcended time, filling the voids of loneliness with the warmth of rediscovered love. Chapter 5. The Unseen Threads. The reunion with Emily was an emotional torrent for Laura, a release of decades of suppressed feelings. Sitting in Emily's modest Santa Fe home, surrounded by the quiet hum of the desert, Laura felt threads of her past, once tangled and broken, begin to knit themselves back together. Emily, frail but lucid, recounted her life after leaving Arizona. The care for her ailing mother had been arduous, followed by years of quiet struggle. She had never married, never had children of her own. Her life had been one of quiet service and often profound loneliness. The photo album had been her most cherished possession, a tangible link to a time when she had felt most needed, most loved, by a small, bright-eyed girl named Laura. "I always wondered what became of you," Emily whispered, her voice raspy, her hand gently tracing Laura's image in the album. "You brought such light into my life, especially during those dark days with my mother. You were my little ray of sunshine." Laura felt a profound sense of gratitude, mixed with deep sorrow for Emily's solitary life. Emily had given so much, silently, selflessly, and had received so little in return. "You saved me, Emily," Laura confessed, tears streaming down her face. "When my parents were distant, wrapped up in their own struggles, You were there. You were my rock, my protector. I don't remember much, but I remember how safe I felt with you, how loved. The conversation continued for hours, spanning decades. Laura shared details of her own life, her marriage, her children, her recent widowhood. Emily listened intently, her eyes shining with interest and a quiet joy. For Emily, this was a validation, a confirmation that her unseen acts of kindness had indeed made a lasting impact. For Laura, it was a profound act of healing, filling in the blanks of a childhood she had only partially remembered, and understanding the depth of her parents' struggles during that period. The old dresser, now in Laura's home in Arizona, was more than just a piece of furniture. It was a vessel of destiny, carrying not just a photo album, but a message, a lifeline across 50 years. It was a physical manifestation of the unseen threads that connect lives in unexpected ways. The coincidence of Laura finding her dresser with her childhood album and Emily's memories inside was too extraordinary to be random. It felt like fate, a gentle hand guiding her towards a reunion that both women desperately needed. Laura decided immediately. Emily could not remain alone. She insisted Emily come back with her to Arizona to live with her. Emily, after initial hesitation, agreed, tears of quiet relief wetting her cheeks. She was tired of fighting the world alone. The move was gentle, filled with a renewed sense of purpose for Laura. Emily's small house was sold, her few belongings packed, including a small, worn box of her own cherished mementos. Back in Arizona, Emily was given a sunlit room in Laura's home, filled with fresh flowers and the quiet hum of companionship. The photo album took pride of place on the old dresser, now polished and shining, its secret drawer no longer hidden, but open to the light. It was a symbol of their rediscovered connection, a testament to the fact that even the most fragmented memories can lead to profound, life-altering discoveries. Laura felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The void left by her husband's death, the loneliness she had felt, was not just filled, but transformed. She wasn't just caring for a distant relative. She was nurturing a forgotten part of her own soul, honoring the woman who had once been her silent guardian. Emily, in turn, found companionship, care, and a sense of belonging she had longed for decades. The unseen threads that had connected them across time had finally become visible, strong and enduring. The old dresser, bought on a whim, had revealed not just a photo album, but a forgotten angel, a profound piece of Laura's own history, and a new, vital purpose for her life. Their reunion was a testament to the power of memory, the resilience of the human spirit, and the quiet miracles that unfold when we are open to the unexpected gifts of the past. Chapter 6. A Life Reclaimed. Emily's arrival in Laura's Arizona home brought with it a profound shift, a gentle reclamation of life for both women. The quiet solitude that had pressed upon Laura's home lifted, replaced by the comforting rhythm of shared companionship. For Emily, it was a rediscovery of warmth, care, and a sense of belonging she had not known for decades. Laura meticulously set up Emily's room, ensuring it was filled with light and comfort. She noticed Emily's fascination with a small, sun-dappled corner of the garden. "It reminds me of the light in Arizona when I was young," Emily rasped. Her voice still weak, but gaining strength with each passing day. Laura quickly arranged a comfortable chair there, a quiet sanctuary for Emily to enjoy the desert light she had remembered for so long. Their days settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings were for quiet conversation over coffee, often with the photo album open between them. Emily sharing faded anecdotes about the people in the pictures, filling in gaps in Laura's memory. Laura, in turn, recounted tales of her adult life, her children, her travels, painting a vivid picture of the life Emily's early care had helped to shape. "You really did build such a beautiful life, Laura," Emily would often say, her eyes shining with quiet pride. It was a form of validation for Emily, a recognition of the invisible but profound impact she had had on a young girl's formative years. For Laura, hearing Emily's fond recollections of her as a child was deeply healing, filling in the emotional blanks of a period shrouded in her parents' unstated struggles. Laura also connected Emily with a local doctor, ensuring her health was properly managed. Emily, who had neglected her own needs for so long, slowly began to regain strength. Her appetite improved, and a healthy flush returned to her cheeks. Laura realized that the void she had felt after her husband's passing wasn't just about the absence of a spouse, but a deeper longing for connection, for a sense of purpose that extended beyond herself. Caring for Emily, listening to her stories, nurturing this rediscovered bond, filled that void with a warmth she hadn't anticipated. The old wooden dresser, the catalyst for their reunion, stood proudly in the living room. It was no longer a mysterious antique, but a beloved piece of furniture, a living archive of their shared past. The photo album remained on its top, a constant reminder of the unseen threads that had woven their lives together. Laura would often run her hand over the smooth wood, marveling at the improbable journey this piece of furniture had taken to bring them back together. Friends and family visited, curious about Laura's new housemate. Laura openly shared Emily's story, the miraculous discovery of the album, and the profound connection it had revealed. Her children, Lisa and Tom, were deeply moved, seeing in Emily a tangible link to their mother's early childhood, a living testament to the kindness that had shaped her. They welcomed Emily with open arms, integrating her into their family with genuine affection. Emily, once a solitary figure, found herself surrounded by the warmth of a loving family, a constant stream of visitors, laughter, and the simple joy of belonging. She rediscovered her love for reading, often found curled up with a book in her sunlit room. She even began to dabble in simple crafts, her nimble fingers weaving small baskets, a forgotten skill rekindled. Laura's life, once tinged with quiet melancholy, now vibrated with a newfound purpose and a profound sense of gratitude. She had not only found a forgotten piece of her past, but she had brought solace to a woman who had quietly shaped her, and in doing so, had reclaimed a vital part of her own soul. The old dresser had not just held an album, it had held a life, waiting to be reclaimed, to finally blossom in the warmth of rediscovered love and companionship. Their lives, once separated by decades of circumstance, were now beautifully, irrevocably intertwined, a testament to the enduring power of human connection. Chapter 7: Threads of Grace. As the Arizona sun painted the desert sky with hues of orange and purple each evening, Laura and Emily found a deep, abiding peace in their shared home. Their days were filled with quiet companionship, laughter that echoed softly in the sun-drenched rooms, and the profound comfort of rediscovered connection. Laura often reflected on the serendipity of it all, a chance purchase at a flea market leading to the reclamation of a vital part of her past, and a profound new purpose for her present. Emily, her health steadily improving under Laura's attentive care, blossomed in the warmth of belonging. She rediscovered simple joys, the taste of a freshly baked cookie, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the gentle hum of conversation in a living room filled with love. Her memories, once somewhat fractured and tinged with the loneliness of a life largely unacknowledged, now flowed freely, enriched by Laura's eager listening and the tangible evidence of the photo album. She would often pick up the album, her frail fingers tracing the faces, her eyes alight as she recounted anecdotes Laura had been too young to remember. "Do you remember the time you tried to feed the robin your toast?" Emily would chuckle, her voice a little stronger now. "Your mother was so worried, but you were so determined. You always had such a big heart, even then." Laura would listen, feeling the layers of her own personality being explained, understood through Emily's recollections. It was as if Emily was providing the missing narrative to Laura's own story, filling in the earliest chapters. Laura realized that this relationship wasn't just about her helping Emily. It was a reciprocal flow of grace. Emily, through her stories and her very presence, was healing Laura's lingering sense of parental emotional distance from her early childhood. The void Laura had felt was not merely filled, but transformed into a rich tapestry of shared memories and unwavering affection. Her parents, in their struggles, had inadvertently created a space that Emily had filled with profound, selfless love. Laura now saw her parents with more understanding, forgiving their unintentional neglect, knowing she had been cared for by an angel in their stead. The old wooden dresser stood as a silent witness to their ongoing story. It had traveled a circuitous route, bearing a sacred cargo of memories, waiting patiently for the right moment, the right person, to unlock its secrets. It was a tangible reminder of the extraordinary coincidences that can shape human lives, the unseen threads that guide us. Laura's children, Lisa and Tom, visited often, their genuine affection for Emily growing with each visit. They saw in her the quiet strength that had shaped their own mother, the selfless love that had provided stability in Laura's formative years. Emily, once a forgotten figure, became their beloved Aunt Emily, a treasured member of their extended family, a living testament to the power of human connection and compassion. Emily, who had once lived a life of quiet resignation, now reveled in the simple rhythms of family life. She would join them for meals, share stories, and simply enjoy the comforting presence of others. Her laughter, once rare, became more frequent, a soft, joyful sound that brought warmth to Laura's home. The journey that began with a curious purchase at a flea market had led to a miraculous rediscovery, a profound act of healing, and the creation of a new, unexpected family. Laura, who had felt lost and adrift, had found her mooring in the quiet strength of Emily's rediscovered presence. Emily, who had lived a life of quiet sacrifice, found her reward in the warmth of a loving home and the embrace of a grateful heart. The threads of grace, woven through time and circumstance, had finally connected, creating a tapestry of love and belonging that would endure for years to come. Chapter 8. The Full Tapestry. The Arizona desert, with its vast, unending skies, seemed to reflect the expansive peace that had settled into Laura's home. Emily, now thriving, was not just a houseguest, but an integral part of Laura's life, her daily presence a comforting rhythm that banished any lingering echoes of loneliness. Their days were a gentle ebb and flow of shared stories, quiet laughter, and the profound satisfaction of companionship forged anew. Emily's memory, once a little hazy due to age and isolation, sharpened with constant engagement. She became the living encyclopedia of Laura's early childhood, recounting detailed anecdotes about neighbors, school antics, and the small, magical moments that shaped a young Laura. Do you remember the day Mr. B. Peterson's prize-winning pumpkin rolled all the way down the street? Emily would ask, her eyes twinkling, and Laura would find a vivid, forgotten memory surfacing, now complete with the emotions and details Emily provided. This collaborative act of remembering became a profound form of therapy for Laura. She finally understood the nuances of her parents' struggles during those years, seeing them not as distant figures, but as human beings grappling with immense pressure and illness. Emily's presence allowed Laura to fully contextualize her own childhood, recognizing that her emotional needs, while sometimes unmet by her parents, had been lovingly fulfilled by Emily. The tapestry of her life, once filled with blank spaces, was now rich and vibrant, completed by the threads Emily had so carefully preserved in the old photo album. The dresser, now known fondly as the magic dresser, held a place of honor in their living room. The photo album, its pages now carefully preserved in archival sleeves, was often open on its polished surface, a constant invitation to revisit cherished memories. Emily would often gaze at the photos, her face softened by remembrance, her hand gently resting on Laura's shoulder. Laura herself found her own voice growing stronger. Inspired by Emily's resilience and the power of their shared story, she began to explore community involvement. She volunteered at a local senior center, finding joy in connecting with other elderly individuals, listening to their stories, and offering the same kind of companionship that had so profoundly transformed Emily's life. She started a small writing group for seniors, encouraging them to share their own unlocked drawers of memory, understanding the therapeutic power of telling one's own story. The bond between Laura and Emily grew deeper than familial love. It was a soul connection, a profound gratitude for the unexpected gift of reunion. Emily often referred to Laura as her greatest blessing, a sentiment Laura echoed with equal fervor. Their relationship defied conventional labels. It was a testament to the idea that family can be found in the most unexpected places, forged through shared history and profound acts of care. Emily lived for several more years, her final years filled with more love and contentment than she had known in decades. She passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by the quiet hum of Laura's home, having finally received the recognition and love she so richly deserved. Her passing left a void, but it was not the same aching loneliness Laura had known before. Instead, it was a space filled with gratitude, with the richness of shared memories, and the enduring warmth of a truly extraordinary connection. Laura continued to live in her home, now truly a sanctuary of peace and memory. The old dresser, the photo album, and the countless stories Emily had shared were a living legacy. She had bought a piece of furniture and found a forgotten angel. She had opened a drawer and unlocked not just a photo album, but a profound truth about her own past, a new purpose for her present, and a testament to the enduring, beautiful, and sometimes miraculous threads that weave the full tapestry of our lives. The journey had ended, but the embrace of rediscovered love would last forever.